Welcome back to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow, brought to you by Guardian Investment Advisors. We've got a great show for you today. We've got a special guest with us today, too, we'll introduce here shortly. Appreciate you being with us every week, whether you're listening to us on the radio or YouTube or Facebook. Thank you very much. It means a lot to us for you to be here listening to us. Today, we've got a great show. We're going to be spending some money.
Spending money?
We're going to talk about spending money. Everybody's best, most favorite thing about financial planning is getting to enjoy it. So we're going to talk about that today. I've got Tim McDermott with me, my regular partner in crime. Gary Thurman is out on assignment today, so I'm going to do my very best to host this show. I hope I can keep it on the rails. We've also got our special guest, co-founder, co-owner, and Gary's boss.
Whoa. Gary has a boss?
Rhonda Thurman with us today. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody having a good morning?
Happy? Can't complain. Life's good. We're starting to see some heavy pollen really come down now. So.
Oh, my car is now green.
It
I have
is.
a green car.
Yeah, I washed it a couple days ago. I don't know why I bothered.
Yeah.
I'm just going to start spraying it off with a hose when I get home.
That's not a bad idea.
I should have hosed mine off. We went and did a camping trip just recently, and we woke up to the morning of the next day and saw raccoon prints all over our cars. Mine probably needs a wash itself, but I was waiting for the pollen to go away first.
Yeah. Well, guys, we talk all the time on the show about financial planning and retirement. But what if I were to tell you some of the biggest financial decisions in your life aren't your investments, they're purchases?
I buy it.
We're going to talk about some of those big ones today, right? We've got a handful of things that, almost everybody strives to buy, at least once in their lifetime, oftentimes more than once. We're talking about homes, cars, education, right? Education is, can be as much or more than a home nowadays, right? Whether or not we're talking about yours, your children's, your grandkids. Weddings are a big one.
What? No, those can be cheap, right?
They can be cheap,
They should be.
But they're not.
but they're oftentimes not. We'll talk about that and what it means. And then we really should look at your retirement, I think, as the largest purchase you're ever going to make in your lifetime.
Yeah,
People don't think about it that way often.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, that's really what you're doing. You're saving up all this money to purchase, retirement, to purchase the freedom of not going to work anymore, the freedom to kind of live your life. Yeah, do what you
Absolutely.
want to do. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like a pretty large purchase.
Yeah, I
Yes.
can completely agree. And, one of these things can add up to over $1 million, easily over a lifetime. House, some people own multiple homes during their lifetime. Those are easily hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, especially in the area that our listeners, Chattanooga, Tennessee Valley area, Knoxville.
I don't think enough people are talking about this, right? We always talk about the investment side of things. We always talk about what's going to happen, with taxes and inflation and all this stuff over the near future. But it all comes back down to taking all this money that we've saved over our lifetime to go purchase these things that we need throughout retirement and throughout life in general. I mean, this stuff starts as early as 16 years old when you buy your first car, right? Rhonda, what was your first car? What did you buy?
I didn't buy it.
Oh, okay. You got a little help?
I was taught to
Did you
believe
steal
that
it?
I did. No, my parents bought it. I did. I stole it. My parents bought me a 1985
Yeah.
Toyota Celica. It was navy blue.
No way.
Yes, loved that car.
I actually have a friend who's rebuilding one of those right now.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. I had so much fun in
Yeah.
that car. But my dad wouldn't let me have the car until I provided him with half the payment.
Okay. All right. So she did buy it.
So, he made me think that I did. So down the road, he handed me, those little passbook savings that
Sure, yeah.
used to get these little books every time. He had put every dime into a savings account. And so when
That's awesome.
car was paid for, he gave that back to me.
I think that's an
So,
amazing way to handle
Yeah,
things.
but I didn't know that was what was happening. I thought I had taken ownership of the car, and I was, proud of that.
I think
It was a
that's great. That's
lesson.
the important part, right?
Yeah.
Is you thought you had some skin in the game, and you really did.
I
until You
did.
got the money back.
Okay.
I did, because that money went towards the next car.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I had to buy from my dad my 1993 Ford Ranger, little 5-speed. Had to buy that
I
from
like it.
him. Tim, what was yours?
I had a 99 Camaro, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I had T-tops and everything. They leaked water, but I loved that car. And my dad actually bought it, and I had to make my payments to him.
The Bank of Dad.
The Bank of Dad,
Bank
yep.
of Dad.
Very nice that he was able to help me out with something like that for my first car. I think it was a whopping $3,200. But nonetheless,
How many speeding tickets did you get in that car?
oof, good question. I don't know.
It's probably added up to be more than the
More than
value
the
of
cost of the car. If I know Tim, yes.
At least one or two, I'll say that. How about that?
I love it.
Here's an important question, I think, when we talk about vehicles. How long did you guys keep those cars?
Okay, that's a very interesting story on mine because my first husband worked undercover for the state. And we ended up taking that vehicle after we got married. I drove the wheels off that car.
Awesome.
He took that car and used it for purposes of buying drugs out of my
Oh.
car.
Nice.
So that car ended up going for, oh gosh, probably 10 or 12 years.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's a
great.
Toyota, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I had mine for about 3 years.
3 years?
And it had so many issues. I had wrecked it once, and it was time to get rid of it
What
and
about
move
you,
on to
Bob?
the next thing.
I actually took mine to college with me. I had that car for a long time. I probably had that car 10 years.
Nice.
Now, it wasn't worth having in years 8, 9, and 10, but,
Sure.
it got me through. Yeah, I held on to that for a while. Wish I still had it.
Yeah.
Little 5-speed.
Yeah.
Certainly, we can all say we're not driving Celicas and old Camaros and old beat-up pickup trucks anymore.
That's right.
But it's important to make sure you kind of keep those things in a wrap. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment and, kind of some ideas on, everybody needs a vehicle,
Yeah.
right? And it's one of those things that a lot of us spend so much time with in our vehicles now. It's one of those things we tend to spend a little bit more on.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily wrong, but you got to make sure it fits into your plan. That
Here's-
lifestyle inflation can get you really hard.
That's
in
exactly
vehicles.
what I was thinking. Yeah, lifestyle inflation, and that's something we have talked about before. But that's not just a vehicle. That can be in a home.
Yeah.
That could be in retirement that you're looking at, or even I would say almost especially weddings. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to keep up with the Joneses on their wedding and what's the greatest venue and the nicest dress. I think that's a big one to talk about in the lifestyle inflation side of things.
Yeah, and I think that goes through all the purchasers we're going to talk about today, especially homes.
I would agree.
Retirement. We see that all the time in retirement. You've got friends or folks through social circles that are taking trips all the time and going and doing and got the newest thing.
And you're trying to keep up.
Trying to keep up.
Yeah.
You don't know if they're paying cash for those things. You don't know if they're financing their retirement. That's a whole other set of problems there if you're going into debt to do those things in retirement.
No kidding. No kidding.
And these over time can make a big difference, right? If you're replacing cars every 1-2 years, and you don't plan for that, it can really take a bite in retirement. Education's the same boat. I went to a private school for 2 years, for my education, but I also did back home in Jacksonville, Tim. It was FCCJ, the community college there. That really helped keep costs down. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Today's show is all about spending money.
Let's talk
Right,
about it.
and how it fits into your retirement picture in the end of the game. I want to offer, like we do every week, Gary Thurman's book, Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. It's a great book that talks about retirement planning and a whole bunch of other things. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and take a picture of that QR code, click on that, and we can send you a copy of the book. It'll take you to the webpage for you to request that. You can simply comment the word book down below. We'd really appreciate to let you know if you let us know we were watching. If you're listening to us on the radio, text that same word, book, if you're in the Chattanooga area to 423-710-9199, or if you're in the Knoxville area to 865-951-7526. We'll get that book right out to you. Take a look at it. We'll send you some really cool videos that you can follow along from Gary directly about each chapter as you read through it. Read through it, and then give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about it. I've set up a no-obligation meeting with Tim and I here in Chattanooga, or Brogan Walters up there in our Knoxville office. Again, it's simply a consultation, a meeting to see how we can help. When we come back, we're going to dive into homes and cars. They can be really nice things to own, of course, but they can also be a trap. So stay with us. We'll be right back on Plan Today, Own Tomorrow.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took a major hit.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, What is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. I'm Gary Thurman with Guardian Investment Advisors. If you've amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. This is one of the greatest tax windows in history. Now is the time to take advantage of this tax discount while you can. All of our advisors are fiduciaries that specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, estate planning, and more. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and tax analysis.
Welcome back to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow, brought to you by Guardian Investment Advisors. I am not your host, Gary Thurman. I'm Bobby Futch with you this morning. Gary's out on assignment. I'm here with Gary's boss, Rhonda Thurman and Tim McDermott, and we are talking about your biggest purchases in your lifetime this morning. We kind of went through some of those in the first segment. We're talking about homes and cars. Education is a big one. Weddings, and probably the most important one, purchasing your retirement. You know, we often don't think about it like that, but I think it's a really refreshing way to think about it. In this segment, we're going to talk about the home and your cars. Really important, but they can certainly be a trap. And as far as homes go, you know, it can be a really good vehicle to help build wealth over time, but it can certainly drain it as well if you get overextended. The home can be your greatest asset, or what I call your biggest financial anchor. And I hope that most of our listeners haven't felt that their home is an anchor. But as we've talked to people regularly, Tim, you know, that's not uncommon when we meet with folks that, you know, they've either over-purchased or, you know, ran into some issues with their home, and it can be a drag.
Yeah, buying a home is a big deal. Well, I think everybody here owns a home. We know what costs come with it, right?
Oh, it's astronomical.
It's not just the mortgage payment and even just taxes and insurance, which are usually built into that mortgage payment, right? It's more about the maintenance that it costs and pest control and yard control and fixes that have to come along the way. Rhonda just put on a new roof last year.
Yes, we did. I mean, and we knew going in that roof replacement was going to be a massive cost, and it was far more than we anticipated and far sooner than we anticipated. But I mean, you know, you have to maintain your home.
But you want to be careful about that being an anchor more than
Absolutely.
an investment at the end of the day,
Oh,
right?
sure.
You know, adding a new roof is nice. It's great to have. You
And it
kinda
adds
have
to the
have it.
investment because the resale goes up.
Do you get your money back on it, right? Maybe not
Hopefully.
entirely, but you're certainly going to sell quicker, easier. The next
Correct.
person can appreciate having that new roof in place. HOA dues can be a big deal, especially if you're buying a townhome or like a condo, right? HOA dues can be astronomically expensive. You do get to cut out the cost of taking care of the yard and maybe pest control or the roof or things like that. But
Yeah, ideally.
but that HOA due can go up and be astronomical. So I guess when we're talking about this, can you buy too much house?
Yeah, I certainly think you can. You know, and there's a lot of rules. You know, one of the biggest rules that's out there is the 28% rule.
Okay.
Right, that's spend 28% of your gross income on houses. But to your point earlier, a lot of people overlook everything that goes into buying a home. You know, if you're going to finance it, you certainly have your principal and interest payments, your traditional mortgage. We were just talking about before the show property taxes. Here in the North Georgia and Chattanooga area, property taxes are a real concern for folks, and they're going up astronomically. So if you purchased your first home and you're kind of capped out of that 28%, it's only going to take a couple of years before you potentially get out of that because property taxes are going up quicker.
And then
than
in Chattanooga, you've got county versus city.
That's right.
You know, we probably took on $100 a week easily in just city taxes, just from moving into the city.
I believe it.
Yeah.
That 28% rule is important. I think it's a great rule to go by, and at least have a rough idea of what things look like. That means if you're making $6,000 a month as an individual or a household, about $1,680 a month, $1,680 a month should go towards home expenses. That includes the mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance on that home that you're looking to buy. If you're spending more than that, you're probably putting yourself in a position where you're spending too much money on the house that you're in, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Tim? Let's look at this from an investment standpoint. I always caution people to look at. I love real estate as an investment. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
but I have a hard time saying that somebody's primary residence is an investment. I don't know if you agree with that, Rhonda,
Oh, I would
or
agree.
not.
I would agree completely. It's a necessity. You have to have your primary residence, and it's only an investment when you sell it.
That's right.
It's not bringing you money in.
And a lot of times, at least I'm guilty of this, my primary residence, I probably put a lot more money into it than I would normally put, like if I had a rental property.
Of course.
Sure.
And I would say I'm guilty of doing things that I'm probably not going to get out of it if I ever sell.
I think
right?
we
But
all
it's
do.
something that my family and I enjoy, right? And so from an investment standpoint, it's probably some poor
Yeah, I would
decision
agree with
making.
you.
But it's one of those things that you got to keep an eye on. And you're not going to get all of your money back out of a house that you put in it, especially if it's your primary mortgage.
Now, historically, homes have always increased in value. We've seen our drops, 2008, of course, but it comes back, and you see your home being worth more in the long run than other things, right? As opposed to cars, right? Cars are depreciating assets, so there is an investment inside of that, but I would not buy it purely as
No.
the investment for your primary
I would
home.
agree.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is a funny story, and I look back and laugh. I bought my first home in Macon, Georgia, when I got out of college. It was about 1,900 square feet. It was a nice brick house. I paid $93,000 for that house.
Big money.
Good luck finding a house that you want to live in, almost anywhere now for $93,000. And it wasn't in the worst neighborhood, so that was kind of good. I held on to it for almost 10 years. And I like to say my return on investment there is a percentage, right? Because it sounds a lot more impressive. About 30% over about 10 years, right? I've sold it for just less than $130,000 when we left. Is that a great return on investment? Probably not. With the capital that I had tied up in that home for so long, probably would have done much better in the market, right?
Agreed.
That's kind of my thought. Even though I had a 30% return, the dollar figure there didn't quite
But not
work
many
out.
people presented it that way to you before you bought that house.
That's right.
Which is unfortunate for our children. Well, for me, but for our children, I think that we're trying really hard to say, how much capital are you losing by living in this house? There's a big mindset shift of just renting and then taking that money and investing it these days, and I'm not completely against that.
Yeah, I think that's worth talking about, right? Owning a home is something that I think most people strive for, but it doesn't always make financial sense, right? Tim, you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are downsides to owning your home?
Yeah, I mean the cost, right? That 30% that you made is nice, but that doesn't include all the costs that you put into that house over the time that you're.
Oh, I'm way underwater on that house.
Absolutely
Yeah,
right.
way
So
underwater.
I'm sure you had pest control, and I'm sure you had to buy a lawnmower, and I'm sure you had to take
Mulch
care
the
of
landscaping, and it's
all of it, right?
all the
Yeah, I
things.
almost blew all my profit replacing the air conditioner one year.
There you go.
Right. And I think about younger folks now, and really not just younger folks. My parents were a great example. My dad was in the military. My parents didn't own a home, until I was in high school. We moved so often, right? And a lot of young folks are doing that now. And owning a home can really tie you down to one spot. And if you're looking to advance in your career, oftentimes you have to move, right? That's why I sold my house in Macon. I had an opportunity here in Chattanooga.
Yep.
So if the market would have been down, I would have had to sell at a loss, right? I wasn't going to keep that house, 3.5 hours away and rent it out. So that's certainly a downside too. And you can control costs so much more when you're renting.
Yeah, absolutely. Renting is great for that. Now, I will say this. I've had a couple of our clients who've called up here recently, and they've asked, does it make sense for me to sell my house and just go rent for the rest of my life? Why do I want to take care of the yard? Why do I want to take care of all these other expenses and things that are in place? And a couple of them, their homes were totally paid off, right? It's a really nice thing to have a paid off home.
Agreed.
In their case, there's a couple things that you have to consider. Right now, they pretty much know what their costs are going to be. Cost of insurance and taxes may fluctuate slightly. They may go up over time, but there's not a lot of inflation that can kind of happen to them with a paid off home. The issue with selling your home and going into an apartment or a condo or renting for the rest of your life is Now, I'm sure you guys have rented at points in your life, right?
Actually, I have not.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
I
Good for
never
you.
have.
Good
But
for you.
my son has.
Okay. You've rented Airbnbs, you've rented
Absolutely.
vacation
Absolutely,
places,
yes.
and I'll bet you every year you go back to rent something, it's more expensive.
100% it is.
They're
yeah,
going to raise the cost of the rental over time.
Of course.
And that becomes really difficult to deal with if you're talking about 20, 30 years down the road when that rent
hard to budget that.
has
Yeah.
doubled, right? And so that's a variable cost that is kind of uncontrollable if you don't own the place that you're in. And that would be, I would be cautious against renting in a situation like that.
Yes.
Renting can make a lot of sense when you're,
When you're
traveling all over the place. It can be tough. So make it easy on yourself,
We,
right?
we got a couple minutes left in this segment. Let's talk about cars because I think a lot of people. I love cars. Tim, I know you love vehicles
I
too.
love cars.
You love cars, right? And it's so easy nowadays, to get financing and flip a new car, and they're changing up the models every year, and it looks different and that sort of thing. But a car is really a depreciating asset. Unless you're a
depreciates
collector of
quickly.
classic cars, right? As soon as you drive that car off the lot, I don't care if it's new or used, it's going to be worth less than you paid for it.
Yep.
And so you want to be really careful with that.
Yeah, purchasing a car, these are one of those things that I would say, if you can, go pay cash for it. Getting a mortgage a mortgage. It feels like a
It
mortgage.
feels, some vehicles feel like a
They-
mortgage
some of
nowadays.
the payments now look like mortgage payments. That's for sure.
But getting a loan on a vehicle can be really costly. And we end up seeing a lot of folks who flip these every year, 2 years, maybe
And
3
then they're
years.
upside down, and
Upside down. You're carrying over equity. You're having to finagle deals at the dealership, and it's really just a game, right? This is part of that lifestyle inflation that we talked about earlier. When you make more, you go spend more, and in this case, if you're doing the whole loan thing, right, you're spending more than what you're bringing in,
yes,
and we want to be very careful about that.
yeah.
Yeah, especially now with interest rates the way they are,
Yeah.
currently. An interest rate on a vehicle is, can be high single digits.
Yeah.
So you want to be really careful with that because it eats away at your cash flow. And if you take that interest rate and go over 3, 4, 5 years, you're paying significantly more for that vehicle than what it shows on the sticker.
It's so easy to look at a brand new vehicle and see all the amenities, all the add-ons, all the packages, and think, $20,000 over 5 years that's not that much.
Yeah.
But $20,000 in the market over 5 years
That's
is a whole
exactly
lot
right.
more than $20,000 on that interest. I mean, you're losing it by the second. But if you don't do the upgrades and you don't do the brand new car, buy a car that's 2 or 3 years old.
That's right.
And put that other money in the market. You're going to come out greater.
Tim, what do you think about leasing vehicles?
Much agreed. I've never leased a vehicle. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's kind of like renting versus owning, right? Except in a lease payment, you're bound to a certain amount of mileage and a couple of other rules that are in place. I guess it has its place.
I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it, and I would do it again, but we use Gary's car as primary, so
Sure.
The mileage was not an issue for me.
Sure. I think you bought that lease out at the end of it, didn't you?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
always an option, right? So that money just doesn't disappear. I guess like a lot of people say rent payments do.
Sure.
I will say this. I did a lot of looking into this a handful of years ago. And if you have the budget and you have put this in a budget for a nicer vehicle, no problem with that, right? But that's the point. I want you to budget. I don't want you to go to the Toyota dealership looking for a vehicle and then find your way to the Porsche dealership and go, I like that one, right? That was not a plan. There's a lot of new technology in cars,
There is.
right? And so if you're getting a new vehicle with brand new tech that's really expensive, sometimes it makes sense to lease that, right? You can get a 3, 4, 5 year lease if you want to.
Sure.
And so it can make sense, especially if it's in your budget and in your plan to replace your vehicle every so often. I don't hate leasing.
I'll throw the last thing out there about vehicles. Always negotiate the price of the sticker, the price of the car. Never negotiate the payment, right? It's really easy to get caught up. That's what dealerships want you to
All
do is
emotion.
negotiate the payment, and then you get wrapped up in, well, I can afford that payment, and then they stretch it out for 84 months instead of 60 months, and always negotiate the price of the car and know what your payment will be.
Good advice.
Yeah,
Good
homes, vehicles, some of the most expensive things that we purchase throughout our lifetime. And whether or not you do well buying homes and buying cars can have a big impact on your long-term goals. So think about these. Have a plan, right? We're not telling you not buy houses. We're not telling you not buy cars. but you need to go in it with a plan. Those are the two biggest things we're going to purchase. The next purchases we're going to talk about is a little bit tougher because they often come from a place of love, and this is where mistakes can get very, very expensive. We were talking about retirement, how this goes in retirement, I want to offer everyone a copy of Gary's book, Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, click the QR code, comment the word book down below, and we'll get one right out to you. If you're listening to us on the radio in the Chattanooga area, text the word book to 423-710-9199. If you're in old Rocky Top, Knoxville, Tennessee, or that area, 865-951-7526. It's a great book. You'll get some videos that Gary has shot walking you through that. Read it, give us a call. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, when we come back, we're going to talk about potentially even more expensive purchases, and those are education, weddings, and a family. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Plan Today, Own Tomorrow.
Hi, my name is Gary Thurman, owner and CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors. For years, our team has helped thousands of retirees and pre-retirees build a confident, predictable, and stress-free retirement plan. If you've worked hard for 30, 40 years, you deserve a retirement that works for you, not one filled with uncertainty, rising healthcare costs, or market concerns. At Guardian Investment Advisors, we take a comprehensive approach to retirement. That means we help you with building a reliable income plan so you know exactly where your paychecks will come from. Navigate Medicare with clarity, making sure you pick the right coverage to avoid costly mistakes. Preparing for long-term care needs with smart planning and protection strategies. Managing your investments with a personalized portfolio tailored to your goals, risk tolerance, and your retirement timeline. Reduce taxes wherever possible with proactive planning so you keep more of your hard-earned savings. You deserve a retirement plan built specifically for you, not a one-size-fits-all approach. Plan your retirement the right way. Call us today or connect with us using one of the many options below. Let's get started empowering your retirement right now. Thank you.
Welcome back to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. I'm your host, Bobby Futch, this week, standing in for Gary Thurman. I'm with Miss Rhonda Thurman and Tim McDermott here. This week, we're talking about big purchases.
Spending money.
We are spending money this week on the show. Last segment, we talked about homes and we talked about vehicles, some of the pitfalls on those large purchases that you want to watch out for, and some of the good things. Right? Everybody wants to own a home. Everyone needs a car to get around. So there's a right way and a wrong way to go about making big purchases. And that's kind of what we're talking about this week. This segment, we're going to get into something that's a little more emotional, right? I'm going to hope Tim doesn't start crying, but he may. We're going to talk about education, weddings, and family. Right?
It is, you joke about that, but we both have daughters, right?
Yep.
We are going to end up paying for weddings one day. Rhonda didn't have a daughter, but I imagine you're still going to help pay for potentially a
Nick
wedding.
and Morgan's wedding, they were so conscious of every dime. The wedding was gorgeous.
Good for them.
It was not. They did not overspend. But I will say, Gary and I did not. When we got married, we didn't have two nickels to rub together.
Yeah.
So we did the sweetest. There was the two of us, the preacher and the photographer.
That's awesome.
And I think the marriage was most important. Sometimes the wedding gets all the attention, and the marriage is the part that should be,
Much
forefront. But yeah, do you know how much weddings cost nowadays? Average?
So, I just looked up the average.
Okay.
I found $36,000.
It's the same thing that I found. Would you agree with that?
That's a lot of money to spend on a one-day party,
Would
right?
agree. I would agree. And I know parents lately, and I love this. I love this idea. They're like, here's $50,000 that I have put aside since you were born. You can either take this and invest it and run off and get married, or you can spend it on the day.
Sure.
And unfortunately, a lot of people
They do
spend
spend it on the day.
on the day.
We've got in our notes, I like this, they call it a one-day spending explosion.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's
and
the
that can
truth.
often be it.
Only it takes a year to plan for
That's
that
right,
one
that's
day
right.
spending
And
explosion.
you're right. I mean, weddings can be anywhere from eloping at a courthouse, which still costs money, believe it or not.
Does.
Right?
Couple $100 bucks.
They don't do that
for
for free,
free.
right? All the way up to Lord knows, we always see these magazines where celebrities are running off to Europe and getting married, millions of dollars. I think the emotion part of this is important. For kids, for parents rather, for their children. you know, you want your children to have, you know, everything they want, but you got to be able to temper that, right?
Sure.
Because $36,000 on a wedding,
So how are you going to handle that, you think?
I have no idea. I haven't really gotten that
So-
far. I do have a daughter. She's 7. I guess I need to go ahead and start putting money away.
And that's just traditionally, the bride's parents pay for it. That's not
that's right.
necessarily, in our case, we kind of split the difference and everybody pitched in, and I think that's nice
I think
too.
that's more popular, you know, nowadays.
I think what we're seeing a lot of, though, is we have clients that come into our office and they paid for their own wedding. They paid for their own education. And now they're also helping their kids pay for weddings and education. They're getting hit twice by it, right? Yeah. Student loans can be a tough thing to go through. In fact, we just had a client come in the other day. Her son went to school, and she committed to helping her son pay for half of that school. And we're sitting in the office, and we're talking about her retiring, and she starts tearing up, and she says she wanted to help her son pay for half of that school, and that was her commitment to him. She is watching him go through the student loan struggle.
Yeah.
Student loans it's a different breed of loan. You can pay into these things for 10, 15, 20 years, and your loan amount will go up.
Yeah.
It should be
And
illegal.
I took loans when I went to Mercer down there in Macon. And, you know, I wasn't in the business yet, but I was a finance major. So I should have known better, right? They make it so easy. Here, Bobby, you want to be in school this semester? Sign here, here's your loan.
Yep.
I couldn't have told you what the terms were, what the interest rate was. They make it so easy. And so you got to be really careful with that. I hesitate in going here, but I think it also, you need to think about what you're studying in school, right? And whether or not it's a financial puzzle. What's the payoff for that degree? That lady we were talking to the other day, her son had over $100,000 in student loans, but he had an advanced degree in psychology, right? That the job prospects there are reasonably good.
Sure.
You just want to be really careful with that, because at schools like my alma mater, you can go in a whole bunch of debt for a degree that doesn't have a lot of professional runway.
And
Yeah.
I think the emotional connection to that too, Bob, is you send your kid away to school, and you want them to live in the safest, best apartment. You don't want them slumming at somewhere for pennies. And I know in my situation, we had put a lot of money back for my son for quite some time.
Which is awesome. You planned for it, right?
I did plan for it. He did not have a student loan. But once he did the numbers on how much it was costing him just to live in a nice apartment in Athens, Georgia, he was like, I could get the same degree and live at home.
Yeah.
And put the money back, which he chose to do, and I'm super proud of him. He has a degree just like anybody else would, but he's also got money in the bank because he chose not to live, outside. And
Yeah. So tell us what you did to help plan for helping to pay for that college, right?
well, when he was, I guess less than 6 months old, my mother and I started contributing to a 529 plan.
Awesome.
It grew very well.
Yep.
He was a smart little guy, and he ended up with graduating with honors, and he had an academic scholarship.
Amazing.
So I didn't need to use all that money
Amazing.
towards his tuition. But then that posed another issue,
Sure.
which was, what am I going to do with the money?
Right. Good problems to have.
Which you advised me. Yes, it's a good problem to have, but there's a lot of negatives and positives to that 529.
Sure,
you got to
sure.
do it carefully.
You got to be really careful with those 529s. You know, Tim and I, it's become a running joke here on the show and in the
Yeah,
office.
we still need to get our shirts.
Yeah, the I Heart 529s is what I'm going to wear, and he's just going to have the big red X through a 529.
on
But
getting those made.
to Rhonda's point, you got to be really careful with them, right?
Yeah.
Because up until recently, there's been a recent legislation change that allows some more flexibility with those plans. But prior to that, you were kind of stuck.
Yeah, you had to pay the penalty, pay the taxes to get out of them. I mean, that's within the last few years that's actually
right.
still.
And so now you can roll some of it out into a Roth IRA. There are ways that if you do get a child does get an academic scholarship, you can get some reimbursement out of that, not pay the penalties. But that's just recently. We saw a gentleman a couple years ago that funded his daughter's 529 plan extremely well. Over $100,000 in this 529. His daughter graduated.
Yep.
Well, he's kind of stuck paying those penalties and interest. I like 529s for what they're put together for, but don't overfund them,
Sure.
right?
So what's another way we can help plan for college expenses? Or I would say this, because I think this all kind of goes together, right? a lot of kids will go to school. Some kids won't go to school. They'll go start a business, or they want
Which
to
I
buy their
love.
first
Yes. I
home,
love.
whatever the case may be. How do you help them plan in a flexible manner?
Yeah, I'll add to that. 529 plans will pay for trade school too, which is really important.
Has that always been the case?
I don't think that's always been the case, but man, welders, electricians,
Because trade school's not cheap.
no.
So
And nowadays, people that are really good at trades are making as much or more than a lot of
More.
professional degrees.
I love that too.
And listen, everybody talks about AI and whether or not AI is going to take out jobs and all this. I want to see AI try to weld, right?
Sure.
It's not going anywhere. But to your point, Tim,
Never know.
Yeah,
Tristan's over there going, I'm not so sure. To your point, Tim, some more flexibility. I don't hate the idea of just putting money aside in another brokerage account for a kid, right? I wouldn't go out and open a brokerage account in the name of my 1-month-old, obviously,
sure.
right? But if you set it aside either in a separate savings account or a separate investment account and give to it regularly like you would a 529 plan, that provides you a lot of that flexibility you're looking for.
So
You
here's-
lose some tax benefits,
Sure.
but in the end of the road, it may be worth giving up the tax benefits for the flexibility.
So this is what a little bit of what I'm doing actually for my kids. I have a savings account for both of my kids. They'll have their own brokerage accounts as well, so that money can grow. When Christmas, when birthdays, when holidays come around, where they would typically give gifts, right? There's actually a bunch of studies out there right now to show that the more toys a kid has, the less happy they are.
I would agree.
See that.
And that's pretty interesting.
Same
And-
for adults.
And the less toys
Yeah,
they
fair
have, and the less toys they have, the more they take care of the ones that they actually have.
I would agree with that.
And so why are we going out and buying 18, 20 different toys, Christmas presents, and all this, crazy stuff? It's fun to go buy toys for the kids, grandkids. You have a grandchild now, and that's exciting, right? Clothes are nice to have, and we kind of have to have those. So that's one of those things I encourage
Necessities.
our parents to buy for our kids. But the toys, not so much. If you're willing to contribute to a fund that is set up for my kids, when they turn 16 and they got to buy their first car, we're going to take that fund. We're going to match whatever they've saved to go buy a car. So it's incentivizing them to save. It's incentivizing them to work hard for something that they want. But we're going to help them with it. And that fund is going to be compiled of everybody who gave money to her. Mom, dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles.
So everybody
cousins.
shares in the joy of her first
That's
vehicle.
exactly right.
I
Everybody
love
got
that.
a part in that. And then that money can also be used for school, buying the first home, whatever she needs that we can help with along the way.
Good parenting, Tim.
We're doing our best
it.
to do that.
I love
We're not getting the big tax benefits from it, but it's ultimate flexibility. We can put into it as much as we want, take out as much as we want, whenever we want, however we want.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I like it. And it may be very well worth giving up that tax benefit for the flexibility.
It's a different approach, but
Yeah, especially in Tennessee, we don't have state income tax here.
that's right.
When I lived in Georgia, the 529 had that added benefit that I got to deduct from my state income taxes, but we don't have that here. We're running up on time, but I think this is a really important one. We may stretch this into the next segment. Supporting adult children. We see this a lot when we meet with folks. And it can be for any different number of reasons. It can be, any number of different ages. Unfortunately, we're not seeing, 25, 26, 27-year-old adult children. I mean, we're still seeing that, but we're seeing 30s, 40s, right, where mom and dad are still helping in some way. That can be really detrimental to your personal retirement savings because oftentimes parents haven't thought that they're still going to be supporting their kids when they get old and should be out of the house. Any thoughts on that, Rhonda?
I mean, gone are the days of 18 and they're gone, and you're no longer responsible for them. And I'm the only one at the table that has adult children. So I will say there is absolutely nothing we would not do for our children.
Yes.
Even though they're 28 and 29 years old, and we love our grandson's mom, we would do anything for her. But I think it becomes super unhealthy for to enable that lifestyle. I understand it's inevitable sometimes, but it is the most emotional thing. I will say it's harder, and you guys will learn. It's harder to parent an adult child than it ever is
I imagine.
the toddlers.
I was an adult child at one point.
My wife would argue that I still am.
I met you when you were an adult child, so I would agree.
It's tough, and I think one of the things parents can do to try to get ahead of this as much as possible. To Rhonda's point, there's some things that are just going to come up and there's nothing you could have done. Is start talking about money early with kids, right? Whether that's an allowance, whether or not, that's what you're spending at the grocery store every week.
Sure.
It's something you really need to introduce early so they can kind of figure out that life isn't free.
Eleanor knows how to swipe a credit card already.
Oh, there you go.
No doubt. At Target, no doubt.
Yeah, right.
We've been talking about big purchases this week on Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. I want to invite you to get a copy of Gary Thurman's book. It's all about retirement planning. It's a great book that talks about this and many other things. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, click the QR code, comment the word book down below. We'll get one right out to you. If you're in the Chattanooga area, text the word book to 423-710-9199. If you're up in the Knoxville area, 865-951-7526. If you're not in Tennessee, text us anyway. We ship all over the country. We'd love to have a conversation with you wherever you're at. When we get back, we're talking about the most expensive thing probably in your life, retirement. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Plan Today, Own Tomorrow.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took a major hit.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. I'm Gary Thurman with Guardian Investment Advisors. If you've amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. This is one of the greatest tax windows in history. Now is the time to take advantage of this tax discount while you can. All of our advisors are fiduciaries that specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, estate planning, and more. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and tax analysis.
Welcome back to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. Today we're spending money. We're talking about some of the most expensive things that we'll purchase over our lifetime. We've talked about houses, cars, education, weddings, children. Our fearless leader, Gary Thurman, is listening to our radio show, and he brought up a good point that we missed earlier when we talked about education. Tennessee will actually cover the first 2 years of community college, which, again, I mentioned earlier, I did. I think it's a great way to do it.
You're taking your basic classes anyways, right?
That's right.
You got to knock them out.
Yeah. Was Mercer's English 101 better than FCCJ's? I highly doubt it, right? And really, those are the ones that you're taking early in
And
your
usually
college career.
if you're at community college, you're probably still living home and commuting. So that's another savings. You don't have to, have an apartment. And a lot of times it gives the student direction. You don't really know for sure. So why would you go to a big university with all the expenses until you know for sure where your direction is?
And all the distractions. I could have said 18-year-old Bobby. I did well at FCCJ, but if I left for a big college at 18, probably wouldn't have gone as well, right? So I'm sure not everybody was as crazy as I was at 18, but it's a great way to make sure that that's really what you want to do because your point, college isn't for everybody anyway.
Great
You're
guidance.
keeping the cost down.
Well, we were just talking about adult children and trying to help support them, right? I think there's two key factors to take into place when we're talking about helping with adult children. Rhonda mentioned it earlier. You don't want to enable your children. You got to give them room to run, spread their legs, fall, and get back up. But the other big one, and this is I've seen this a couple times this last year, you don't want to inhibit yourself from being able to retire or do the things that you need to do to try and help somebody else.
Which in turn, you become a bigger burden on that adult child.
That's correct.
That's what a lot of
So-
people overlook, right?
Right.
If they spend all their money on their children, you get late in retirement and you've run out of money.
Yeah.
Well, guess who's probably going to be taking care of you? You hope your kids would take you back in.
That's right. That's right.
And that could probably be avoided.
We've
So,
seen a lot recently where folks are coming in and they're over the trend of passing money on when they die. They want to give money to their kids and their children who may be doing financially well and very well secured themselves, but they want to give things to them now.
yeah.
They
Whether
can see
that's
them enjoy it.
Yeah, whether that's money or cars or experiences, right? We just had a client.
Memories.
Yeah, take all their kids over to Alaska.
Yeah, went on an Alaskan cruise like 10 deep,
Yep.
right? My point, the only thing I'll say about that is that was always part of their plan is to leave a legacy.
That's right.
Right? They're just taking that and going, you know what, I want to enjoy it with them.
That's right.
Again, it needs to be part of a plan. You know, that's what are today. That's why the name of our show is Plan Today, Own Tomorrow.
That's right.
We're talking about potential pitfalls in all these purchases today. I don't want it to be overly negative. It just has to be part of your plan.
Yep.
Right. So you're going to purchase your first home, have a plan. You know, make sure you understand what you're doing when you're trying to finance education and all that, because all of those things have to fit into your overall retirement plan. That's what we're going to spend the last segment here talking about, is what everybody hopes that they can purchase, right? And you want to be able to purchase the most expensive retirement you possibly can. My point earlier is that it all has to fit together, right? And all too often we see people make purchases, like we talked about earlier, at the detriment of their retirement plan. And it can be a long, long retirement. And what are some of the things, Tim, that are often overlooked when you're thinking about retirement planning?
Yeah, and this is where we go into taxes and inflation and healthcare. I mean, the list goes on and on when you're talking about retirement planning. This is what we talk about every single week here on the radio show, is what happens in retirement. Speaking of spending money, our government is currently spending about $5 million a minute, putting us into a large deficit. Which means during our, what have we been on this show, about 45 minutes? Give me 45 times 5. We got about $135,000 or $135 million. We have gone more into debt since we started this show this morning.
It's mind-blowing.
That creates a monstrous amount of issues. Somebody has to pay it one day, right? And that's a debt that keeps accruing. Not only does the debt keep accruing, the interest on our debt keeps accruing. We can argue till we're blue in the face about why feds are keeping rates so low, but I think at the end of the day, the reason rates are low is because we couldn't afford the interest on our national debt if they weren't low.
Yeah. Which means at some point that's going to be, if you want to look at retirement as a purchase,
Sure.
You know, what is your retirement going to cost? Big drivers of that cost are taxes, right? And they're probably going to go up. We talk about it all the time. Inflation is a big one, especially in healthcare. And I would say healthcare is the other biggest cost in retirement. You know, the stat is a healthy 65-year-old can expect to spend $170,000 just on regular healthcare costs. You know, that's prescription drugs, that's
that doesn't
co-pays.
take into account a heart attack or a hip break or
That's right.
any
Long-term
number of
care.
Long-term care.
long-term cares.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to look at. Taxes are a big one. We talk about a lot, to Tim's point. I think it's important, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Roth conversions during this, because this is a way that you can help drive the price of your dream retirement down.
Sure.
Is by going ahead and paying taxes now. You know, kind of accelerate some of those taxes, especially with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed last year.
Yeah, get Uncle Sam out of your pocket. I don't know about you, Rhonda, Bobby. I'm not a big fan of Uncle Sam in my pockets all the time. Nobody loves to write that check in April. And so if we can find a way to get Uncle Sam paid off and gone, that's one less debt that we have in retirement. And one more way that we can kind of control what our retirement looks like and make it less expensive.
Yeah, and the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, when we was introduced by the Trump administration, you know, they started talking about, you know, taking away taxes on Social Security. That didn't happen, but what it was replaced by was that $6,000 a person
Which may have been better. in the long
deduction over 65. And I agree with you,
Yeah.
Rhonda. I think it's
Yeah.
better, right? Because you can use that $6,000 a piece for any kind of taxes you want, not just Social Security taxes. That fits really well into Roth conversion planning.
When we look at retirement, usually we're looking to retire, and then we've got several years. We call them the go-go years, right? We got the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go years. In those go-go years, we want to go do things, right? Rhonda, you think about, I don't know, 10 years down. Are you ever going to retire?
No,
Yeah, probably not. But you'll slow down a little bit.
I might.
We need
are,
you to take Gary with you.
what are the things that you want to do when things slow down for you?
Well, you know, we are fortunate enough that we travel
Sure.
quite a bit now, but I don't want to slow that down
Sure.
at all. But I am happy that, you know, I have done and seen some things on the bucket list now. But I don't know. I don't want somebody to tell me what to do. That's the thing. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. I want it to be my decision, and I don't want to be restricted by, you know, a super tight budget because of bad mistakes made early on.
Sure.
That's that freedom that everybody talks about in
Yep.
retirement.
Yep. And we talk about that all the time in the go-go years, right? Being able to go do, have the freedom to go to the Alaska trip, to go see Europe. Some people don't want to travel overseas, but the freedom to go buy the RV and travel around the United States,
absolutely.
or be involved in the activities that you want to join, the golf club that you want to join.
How
right?
about you, Tim?
Do
What's
these
your
things.
ideal retirement? What's your go-go years?
I don't know. I've thought about that a lot. I'm a big my dad, right?
Yes.
My dad's a go-go person.
He
used to have
sure is.
purpose in life. I've always thought that if I ever just won the lottery and ended up with $1 billion in my pocket, would I quit my job? And I think the answer is no.
No.
I need purpose.
Sure.
I've got a lot to give and I want to give it. And so I don't know if I would ever fully retire. I think my retirement would look a lot like part-time work, maybe.
Yeah. I think retirement without
slowing down.
purpose is just dreadful.
Maybe I'll change my mind down the road. We do have a lot of clients who retire. They want to get away from their 40-hour week job. They want to get away from the high stress. They've spent their whole life kind of climbing this ladder. They ended up in a management position that paid really well, and they did really well for themselves. But that comes with a lot of stress.
Right.
They got rid of that, and they took a 20-hour-a-week job, down the street at a charity, or we have a couple clients who just work at Publix for a few hours a week. They want something to go do. They want to be purposeful, but they don't want the high stress.
And it's really important to keep active in retirement, right? Because if
Oh,
you
it
don't
sure
have,
is.
Gary says all the time, if you don't have your health, why are you worried about your wealth?
Yeah.
And it's so easy for folks to retire and then just kind of turn into a couch potato.
Sure.
And you've worked 30, 40 years in retirement to, have a lifestyle that, shortens your retirement significantly. I think people overlook a lot of that. It's important to know your retirement number, and that's different for everybody, I think. Oftentimes people think I need to have saved X in order to retire, but it's really all about how much income you have in retirement. All right, that's why we have our bucket system, Tim, that we talk about quite often. You want to talk a little bit about how the bucket system goes into retirement planning and the changes you'll see as you get closer to retirement in the buckets.
Yeah, we make things super simple. Our bucket strategy simply takes 3 different buckets. You have a red, yellow, and green bucket. Red buckets being money in the market. This is how we keep up with inflation. This is where we make our gains. This is also where risk is in the market. And when you retire, typically you're taking your 401k, which is all invested in that red bucket, and you're looking to protect it in some form, fashion, or another. That's where the green bucket comes in. The green bucket is designed to be protective. It can give a guaranteed income source back to you for the rest of your life. It's safe. It's available there for your income plan. It has benefits like being able to take care of long-term care down the road. And so it protects and takes that lump sum of cash that you've built over your lifetime and turns it into an income stream that you can now retire in. Our yellow bucket there being our emergency account. We want quick, easy, accessible cash in the bank that when the car breaks down or something happens that you need quick cash to, it's right there and you can go grab it. It's a very simplified plan that helps take care of all the necessities in retirement. Of course, taxes and inflation and all that planning going into it as well. But the simplified understanding is the 3 buckets.
Yeah, Gary talks about that and more in his book, Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. We'd love to give you a copy. If you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, scan the QR code, comment the word book down below. We'll get it out to you. If you're in the Chattanooga area, listen on the radio, 423-710-9199. Text us the word book. We'll get one out to you. If you're a little further north in the Knoxville area or beyond, 865-951-7526. We'll get that right out to you. Retirement, most people don't retire alone. I'd say that, right? You have a spouse, significant other that you're going to retire with, and it's super important that these decisions and the vision for retirement, this plan that we've been talking about, is shared with a spouse. And I know both of you guys are really great about doing that and keeping your spouses involved in the plan. You just want to talk about how much that's meant to you and how important that is to make sure it's not a one-person ship going into retirement?
Well, I would just say all the purchases that we were just discussing are usually made with your spouse also.
Sure.
So, the better the purchases with your home, the weddings, the vehicles, the education of your children, all of those done well will make those buckets so much more full.
Yep.
So, I think it's important to start early in the marriage and have a conversation. Okay, do we really want to be house poor, or do we want to be retirement rich?
Sure.
So I do think, to your point, Bob, it's very important that,
Yeah, I would.
that you communicate with your spouse.
I would never go buy a house without my wife. I think she would probably kill me. It's very important. She would want to know what the layout is. She would want to make sure that it works well for our kids and our family and how we kind of operate in life. But the same thing's true for retirement planning. We end up seeing a lot of clients that come into our office, and it's very typical for one of the spouses to be the kind of head, the number person, the retirement person. They take care of all this, right? Yeah. The other person, I mean, we've had a few clients where they may come in once, and they know that we're here, but they're not terribly involved.
Yeah, the spouse, right?
Yeah,
You're talking
correct.
about
Yeah, I would encourage you to be involved in that process, just like buying the home.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that that retirement plan is built and suited for your needs, both people included. The numbers may not be super exciting to you, but at least understanding the plan, the details. One of the things that we ask in our first meetings with folks is, what do you want to do in retirement, right? Yeah. And that looks different, for each other.
It does.
You're not a golfer.
Yeah, the car you want might be not be
That's
the car
right.
Joel wants.
Right.
But,
I can promise you, after I saw Tim's last car purchase, that probably Joel wasn't excited about that as he was.
No, but she was involved.
Hey, that's what we're talking about. But to your point, I think it's really important. And, the fun thing about, my favorite part about meeting with folks is to have that conversation about retirement. And it's fun. Some people haven't had those. And so you get different answers from different folks. And it starts that planning conversation. And that's really what Guardian Investment Advisors is about, is getting to know you, getting to know your family, and how to make all of these purchases we talked about today work in an overall plan to make sure you can retire successfully and comfortably. We want to make sure that you take care of all these things we talked about and can retire comfortably. I invite you to read about all of this and more in Gary Thurman's book, Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. We believe so strongly in this. It's the name of our television show. It's the name of his book. It's the name of the radio show. You can get that by clicking the QR code on Facebook or YouTube. Comment the word book down below if you're watching us on the internet. We'll get that out to you. Or you can text us in the Chattanooga area, 423-710-9199, or Knoxville area or beyond, 865-951-7526. Great show this week. A little bit different. We've had a good time talking about spending money. Some of the more fun things about retirement planning. We'll be here next week, same time. We invite you to come back, plan today, own tomorrow. Appreciate everybody. God bless.